Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of our webinar series. I'm Parisa, as you know, founder and academic director at English Therapy, and your host today. I hope you've got a nice cup of tea, like me, or coffee ready because this session is going to be both comforting and eye-opening. Now, today we're diving into a topic I know many of you have thought about, which is what gets in the way of your language learning. In other words, what are those bad habits or sneaky little misconceptions that quietly ruin your progress without you even realizing it? And with me today is someone who brings a wealth of experience to the table, Sarah, one of our brilliant teachers here at English Therapy. Well, she primarily teaches adults on our IELTS, Enterprise English, and English for Life courses. Sarah also holds a diploma in TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages, and has over 20 years of experience as an EFL teacher in various countries. She has worked as a teacher trainer as well, so we're definitely in good hands today. Sarah?
Hi, Paris. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here to talk about this. As you said, after more than 20 years of teaching English, this conversation is definitely long overdue.
Yeah, I agree. And you work with so many learners from around the world, and I'm sure your insights will be really helpful. So let's dive right in. We've received some great questions from you guys in advance. Thank you for sending those in. But don't worry if you didn't get a chance to submit yours, because we'll have a Q&A, question and answer session at the end. So feel free to ask your questions then, or even drop them in the chat as we go along. Now, let's start with the first question. Question number one, Sarah. What's the number one thing you've noticed that stops learners from making real progress?
Well, I would say that the biggest one is perfectionism. So many learners, they demand too much of themselves to a point that they don't speak unless they have perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation. So that means that they're silent for so long. But we forget that a language, it's a skill and it's not just facts that you memorize. So
True.
you're meant to mess up at the beginning. I mean, we've had students that have spent months in the classroom completely silent, just because they were too afraid to speak or to put themselves out there. And once they had that confidence, they improved immensely. I mean, it's just like swimming. There's no way that you can learn how to swim without diving into the water.
That's absolutely true. Exactly. It's like saying you'll start learning how to swim once you're already good at it. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work that way. And honestly, lots of people around me mix up fewer and less all the time. So no one's perfect and no one's keeping score. And we're doing just fine, I guess. So that brings us to the next question. Question number two. Do you think that perfectionism comes from how people were taught in school, or is it something else too?
That's a big part of it. So, in many school systems, especially in formal settings, students are punished for making mistakes, and teachers use red pens, low marks, and they are corrected in front of everyone. So, that creates some sort of fear, and they just stop trying. There's another factor as well nowadays, currently social media is putting a lot of pressure onto the learners. So, for example, you see videos of short videos, how to speak perfect English, and students start asking themselves, so why am I not speaking like that? When am I going to speak like that? But what they really don't see is the time and the effort that that influencer put into the video before they could actually put the video out there, how many mistakes they made along the way.
Exactly. And one thing about social media is that it often gives the impression that fluency just happens overnight, like it's effortless. But language learning is a gradual process that takes time, consistency, and also patience. If it were as instant as it looks online, we'd all be polyglots now, speaking, I don't know, five, six languages. So, question number three is what's one habit that feels useful to learners but actually does more harm than good?
Cramming loads of vocabulary, writing just random lists, cramming without any context. So we usually see learners with notebooks with long lists just of new random words and memorizing random words. But without that context, it's as if you had all the pieces of the puzzle, but you didn't have it all put together. So, for example, just an example, you have
Hmm.
the word take and
Right.
off and rain.
Mm,
And so you put your words on your list. But then when somebody says, I took off my shirt because it was raining, the person doesn't really see how the
mm.
words come together in real life. So it's really hard for you to understand how words are used if you just cram.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I once had a student. I mean, this is just one of the examples, obviously. So this one student learned a phrase on the other hand. I mean, from one of the classes or probably from outside, and then used it in every paragraph, even where there was no comparison happening. Like there was no other hand. Like on the other hand, I love pizza. Well, it sounded fancy, sure, but it didn't make sense in context because well it just you need to know where to use the words. So I had to say no to them, not because the phrase was wrong, but because how and when you use it really matters. So context is the key. Now, question four, Sarah: how should learners actually study vocabulary then?
Well, th- the main thing that they have to do is to focus on the real language.
Mm,
So read and listen to things that they're interested in. Yeah. So do things that they like, pick these words up naturally.
mm,
If you do, I mean, there's nothing wrong with vocabulary lists. On the contrary, vocabulary lists are helpful. But if you do pick up a new word, instead of just randomly writing down the word in list, write it in a sentence. Put
mm.
that word into practice, write it in a story, pick up the word and see, um, use it correctly in a conversation, see how it is used in a conversation, and write down as many examples as you can actually. Speak to yourself. I mean, go around the house using the word in a sentence. There's nothing wrong with that. And let it become an active part of your everyday life. A word diary. So, not just using the list, not just word list, but a word diary where you actually have the word, use it in a sentence, make up your own sentences, and try and embed that into your everyday life.
Yeah. Well, a word diary is actually a really practical tool. It helps you keep track of new vocabulary in a personal way. And seeing words in your own handwriting also can make them more memorable, I'd say. Whether it's like neatly written or full of scribbles or even coffee stains, that would be mine. What matters is that it reflects your learning journey, and that makes it powerful, I think.
Yeah.
Well, question five is about Netflix.
Okay.
Well, a lot of learners say they watch Netflix to improve their English. Is that helpful, or is it just a good excuse to binge watch?
It can help. It depends
Mhm.
on how you use Netflix. It's a wonderful tool. If you just watch the series or the film with the subtitles in your own language and then you zone out, it's not really active learning. Okay, you're
Mhm.
relaxing and you're focusing on the subtitles in your own language. But if you watch it with English subtitles, you start to associate the words with how it's pronounced, what you're trying to understand, if that's really it, if that's what you understood. It's helpful if you pause every once in a while
Mhm.
to make sure that's actually what you heard. Another really good technique is what we call shadowing.
Yeah.
So shadowing is basically when you pause and you try to shadow, you imitate what the actors are saying, but knowing what the actor is saying as well. That's a really good way to improve pronunciation, connected speech. Yeah, and that's where your fluency improves as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I've done that. I used shadowing when I was learning German, and it was incredibly helpful. It improved my pronunciation a lot and helped me get used to the rhythm of the language, which is very important. But trust me, who you choose to copy makes a big difference. I once tried shadowing Peaky Blinders for fun, and I ended up sounding like a very confused gangster. So yeah, pick your models
Yes,
wisely, guys. Yeah.
I
Now,
agree.
yeah, true. Question six, Sarah. Well, some learners tend to compare themselves to other learners, a friend, a classmate, or something. Uh, what do you think about that? That seems to be a huge issue, I guess.
Oh, definitely, definitely. You should never compare yourself. First of all, we all have different starting points. We all have different learning experiences. We all have different times, a different amount of times that we can dedicate towards studying as well. I have some students who learned English through video games, and
Mm.
others through reading books, reading novels, and others through studying online or going to courses. So we're all different. We all have different starting point. It's important for you to know that that's your journey. Yeah, and the only person that you can compare yourself to is you now and you in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing where you started and how far you've come, that's the only thing you should be comparing.
Yeah.
That's what matters, yeah.
Yeah, well, I always say language learning is not a race. It's much more, well, let me say, like gardening. You don't rush it, and you definitely don't pull up the plant every day to check if the roots are growing. Or you water it regularly, give it sunlight, protect it from the cold, and trust that growth is happening, even when you can't see it right away. So it takes time, it takes care and patience. Oh, sounds deep, right? Also true. Now, I want to actually go deeper a bit and talk about something a bit beyond language learning, let's say, or classrooms. I want to ask you about confidence and emotional side of learning. How do you think confidence and emotional state affect learning?
Oh, massively. So when a learner is feeling ashamed, is feeling nervous, judged, even um embarrassed to be in a new situation, they block any
Yeah.
sort of new information that they get. We have a name for this actually. It's called your affective filter.
Yeah.
Okay, and it means that emotional stress, it prevents you from absorbing the new language. So, for example, I've seen some students who are brilliant students, brilliant in writing, they listening, they understand every single word that they hear reading, but when they speak, they freeze because they're scared that people will laugh at them. So that's why it's really important that you're in an environment that you feel supported, you feel safe, and so I mean I think that the work that English therapy does, it's really fascinating, it's unique because it works on making the student be able to open up and feel safe, and that will naturally improve their learning.
Yeah, I agree. Well, learning really happens when you feel safe, and
Yes.
you can't focus on new words or grammar if your brain is too busy worrying about making mistakes or being judged, even. That's why we care about our learners as humans first and then as a students. So, what we do, I want to talk a little bit about this part of, let's say, our work. We create a space where it's okay to just get things wrong because that's how real learning happens. So in our classes, you know it because you teach them, we slow things down when needed. We celebrate small wins of our students, encourage them to ask questions no matter how simple they might seem. So we also include that therapy informed practices in our approach, as you know, to help reduce anxiety and build students' confidence. Well, it can be through gentle correction, active listening, or just simply giving students time to think and then respond and then speak. And we are always, I would say, we're always working to make sure our learners feel supported and respected because that is what um, is important and help them in language learning and improving better. Now, we're coming towards the end. This is question 8. We've got 10 questions in total. Now, question 8 is okay, let me see. What's a common myth that learners believe about becoming fluent?
I would say that there is this myth that you have to speak quickly, speaking fast with a perfect accent that
Right,
would
yeah.
be fluency. That's actually not true. Okay,
Yeah.
so fluency, it means that you can express yourself easily and naturally, even if you do have to pause and use simpler words. Okay, so I've met
Mhm.
people with strong accents, but with wonderful grammar. Okay, and they're confident, they're clear, and I've met people who have lovely pronunciation, but have to slow down a
Yeah.
little bit in order to get their what they want to say across. So the important thing is forget that you have to speak quickly. Don't focus on that perfect pronunciation because it doesn't exist. We have so many beautiful different forms of pronunciation. Focus on your own.
Yeah. And I always tell my students as well that you don't have to sound perfect to call yourself fluent. Having an accent is completely fine. And what matters most is that you speak clearly and people can understand you. So that is important. Everyone has their own way of speaking, and sounding different isn't a problem at all. As you mentioned, fluency is about communication, not imitation. Now, question number 9. What about learners who try to do kind of everything? Grammar books, apps, classes, YouTube, podcasts, and then at the end of the day, they still feel stuck.
I'm exhausted. Yes, this is an overload trap. Okay,
Mhm.
so they're just doing too much,
Yeah.
anything, everything. So slow down. First of all, it's better for you to do less, but do it in a more mindful manner. So
Yeah.
pick one or two methods up that, and it's important that they're things that you enjoy. So
Hmm.
maybe what I enjoy is not the same as what you enjoy. So it has to be something that you like that brings you joy. Yeah, so maybe you like a specific topic, for gardening, for example. Pick
Yeah.
pick up pick a podcast about gardening, stick to that podcast. Listen
Yeah.
to it for a while, write things down, try using the words that you learned. Yes, if you're in class, review what you learned the day before. Okay, so more input doesn't always mean more progress. Yes, so you have to also be reviewing that input, keeping that input active.
Yeah, I love that. It's like food, you know? Eating everything on the menu at once doesn't make you healthy. And what happens to you is you just get a stomachache and regret your life choices. So students have to trust their own pace, I would say. Well, question 10, and that's our final question before we open it up for, let's say, our participants' questions later. If you could give just one piece of advice to every learner watching this right now, what would it be?
I would say that the main thing is just to be kind to yourself. I mean, seriously, progress in learning a language is it isn't it's what you said about picking up the roots every day.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's not always obvious.
Hmm.
So one day you feel fluent, one day you feel as if you were on a TV series, and the next day you forget a silly word. So don't feel bad when you're not remembering everything. Just keep going, enjoy yourself. That's the main thing. Celebrate the small wins. Yeah, and whenever you do understand a joke or an expression or I've seen that before, celebrate it. Yeah, and be nice to yourself. You're doing a great job. You're already learning a second, third language, so just
Yeah.
enjoy the moment, I would say as well.
Yeah, well, I honestly want to print that out and stick it on all of our learners' wall. It's such an important reminder that they remember that they're doing more than they think. Every time you guys try to speak, even if it's not perfect, you're making progress. Every mistake, every pause, every word you look up in a dictionary, they all count. So let's just take a moment to appreciate that. You're showing up, you're trying, and that is powerful, and that is what matters most. So, thank you so much, Sarah. This has
Thank
been
you. Thank you
such
for
a
having
rich
me.
conversation. Thank you. And so many practical tips, and honestly, a lot of heart too. Now,